So I like to try to spread out the streaming service love every once in a while. Just check in some places and see, we'll see what's going on. See if I can review something from a streamer that I haven't reviewed something from in a while. It's been a minute since I've reviewed something off of Tubi, so I was like, oh, let me just see what Tubi's got going on here. And yeah, there's audio description on Tubi, and it's mostly schlocky crap. But every once in a while they get a couple decent films. Um, but as soon as I checked into Tubi, I was like a couple titles deep into like sort of looking at it, and they were like Street Fighter, and I was like, oh my god, it is. It's the 30th anniversary. I have to do it. I'm not even signed into my Tubi on my Roku, and I was like, this oddly knows me way too well. Last year around the same time, Peacock suggested to me Double Dragon, and I was like, oh my god, I must. I have to do it. I know these films don't have audio description, but we have to talk about them. So I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and this is, of course, it has to be. I have to have this on my channel. We're going to talk about Street Fighter. This is the 1994 adaptation starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, Raul Julia, Kylie Minogue, Ming-Na Wen, Wes Studi. Yeah, this is just, oh my god. This is one of those films that is just recognized as being one of the just absolute worst. For people who love to watch those campy bad films, Street Fighter is like right up their alley. Like has to be. Like this is there. I mean, this is near the front of the list because there's one good thing in this film, and it's Raul Julia. And he has what I would even argue is one of the greatest lines in cinema. It is, I think, one of the most quotable lines, and when he says it, I could see this if we had a screening, if there were like live screenings of Street Fighter and the audience came back, you know, I think the audience would go nuts. Everybody, you know what line. If you've seen Street Fighter, you know what line it is. But I'll do it. I'll try to. I can't do the Raul. I can't go full Raul Julia here. But it's the day I came to your village was the most important day of your life. But for me, it was Tuesday. Like, objectively, that's a great line. That, like, transplant that line into like any great villain, and it would become iconic on a wholly different level. It's a great line, and Raul Julia delivers it with such intentionality in this film that you're like, maybe does he think he's in a good movie? Poor guy. Unfortunately, this is his last cinematic experience as Raul Julia passed away. So for somebody with such an illustrious career as Raul Julia, this is such a weird thing to have as his final performance. But um, yeah, this film's hot garbage. But anyway, blind audience, I've got a black baseball cap on today, black sunglasses, and I'm wearing a Captain America shirt. So um, this is I don't even know where to begin. So it's back in that time period when we were making video game movies and trying and not really understanding how to make video game movies. Like we didn't quite know what that looked like. We had Super Mario Brothers and Double Dragon and then Street Fighter. And all of them are kind of those so bad it's good films to watch. Like none of them are actually good films. They can be entertaining depending on your ability and level of abuse. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are you willing to take as a viewer? So, but Jean-Claude Van Damme in this is awful. It's just, he is terrible. And this is Guile. Raul Julia is, I'm going to defend it and say he's fine. He completely understood the task And I think that in some regards, he also understands the movie around him is exactly what it is, and he kind of camps it up a little bit and eats and chews a little bit, chews the series just a little bit in some places. Um, but we have a lot of forgettable faces. They do try to throw in all the Street Fighter characters here into some sort of like a plot where Bison has taken some people hostage and some fake organization must pay the ransom of $20 billion to him or terrible things will happen. So, you know, it's kind of a low amount of money nowadays. 20. It still feels high, but I mean like it feels like somebody nowadays would be like $100 billion. You know, they always there's always a guy who's like looking at the bank transfer. Has it gone through? No, no, it hasn't. You know, this is probably films like this that they came up with the idea for PayPal. They were like, hey, what if we could just PayPal the villains 30, $30 billion? You know, what if that was the case? But um, no, I mean, you have all the fighters here. Anybody who you can think of at least appears in the film in some form. Uh, there's like Sagat is in here. Uh, Vega, Honda. I mean, like there are people who appear, but they're just not like huge parts of the film. So I think they did a pretty good job of getting all the original Street Fighters in here. Ken and Ryu are like bad guys turned good guys. Like they're just, but they're also kind of just bumps on logs and could have been interchangeable with like anybody else. Literally, you could have taken the guys out of Double Dragon and put them in Ken and Ryu, and I don't think anybody would have noticed. So, you know, Scott Wolf and Mark Dacascos. I still don't know how to pronounce his name. Anyway, those could have been Ken and Ryu, and I don't think anybody would have noticed and blinked. Um, they're just really forgettable. Everybody in this film is kind of forgettable because there's nothing. The film isn't really interested in involving them as characters. That they're super cool. It tries to do a lot, and it has like this really shitty plot, and we keep focusing on the creation of Blanca. You know, Jean-Claude Van Damme near the top of the film is like, Carlos, we're coming for you. I am coming. And then Bison is he finds this guy Charlie, and he's like, Charlie, Carlos, Charlie Blanca, you. And then it makes him into obviously what we, if you've ever had any passing reference of what Blanca looks like in the, it's a really shitty version of that. I did see this film as a kid. I do own this film on DVD. I've seen it a couple times. It's really hard to watch. Um, in terms of like good bad flicks, which by the way is an excellent channel you should subscribe to, and they actually have a video on Street Fighter sort of explaining what the fuck. Anyway, uh, I would say that this uh, isn't my favorite bad flick to watch. There are other films that I think own their campiness a little bit more. This is just kind of like a bad movie with Raul Julia. So like he's fun and it's fun to watch Raul Julia, and there's something very sad about this being his last performance and being like we couldn't get in that final good performance, that final, you know, there's no Addams Family 3 for him. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what was next on deck for him because he kind of went suddenly. I don't know where else he would have gone after this, but yeah, it's bittersweet because he is the center focus of making this film entertaining. At the same time, also, you realize, damn, such a great actor. You know, Kiss of the Spider Woman. Um, uh, just obviously for me, yes, he's the Gomez and will always be the Gomez. And is the Gomez for a lot of my friends too. I know people who should not know who Raul Julia is, but know who he is on like an obsessive level because of those Addams Family movies. So excellent actor, and he is doing something here with Bison, and he's trying to make the film watchable. Whereas if you look at something like Batman and Robin, that's just campy. It's just there's nothing that's really nobody's really killing it. The film is just cheesy. It just is from beginning to end, which makes it sort of like a better bad film to watch to me. Like I'd rather sit down and watch Batman and Robin because it's like I don't know what's happening here, but like there's something about these lines, this dialogue, the interaction with everybody. It's just very campy in a way that I don't even think that they knew how campy they were making it. Because I think they were thinking, oh, this is a sequel to Batman Forever, which is not as campy. So it just kind of went off the rails, you know? Um, but here, this is just bad direction. It's just what this is. It's putting too much. He's giving Jean-Claude Van Damme too much dialogue. Um, it's I don't know. It's not a good script. Obviously, something like Ming Na Wen, I mean, she had a great run on ER, so it's hard to say that if you had given her the right dialogue, she wouldn't have been able to do something with it. So yeah, it's just bad direction that just created this film. It's just sort of an amalgamation of that thing, that video game that you liked playing at one time. But anyway, it's 30 years of it, and should this have audio description? Yeah, on like I'm sort of like a describe everything person. I think everything should have audio description, but do I think like there's some sort of like high level of importance of getting audio description on the Street Fighter? Considering some of the titles that I've seen out there that are revered classics that don't have audio description, Street Fighter is not at the top of my list. If this had been TTS, I would have understood a little bit more. I'd have been like, I guess it kind of just highlights the shittiness of the movie. It sort of like complements that. So even though I don't really like TTS, but um, yeah. So downstream, sure, we should audio describe Street Fighter. It was to the point where I was like, I'm not even gonna look for it because I can't imagine we prioritize this. Who the fuck prioritized this film? That would be my question. Um, so, but it's 30 years of Street Fighter, and it's really terrible. And if you want to watch bad movies, check out Street Fighter. Blind or not blind, it's just objectively awful. So, audio description is not going to make this film good. There's nothing. What makes this film good is your ability to enjoy a bad movie. I don't think there's anybody out there that legitimately goes, "Oh yeah, this movie is really good," and missed out on Oscar consideration. We should have slipped this in there at the Oscars. No, it's one of the reasons why people kind of go, well, video game movies don't really work. Have you seen Street Fighter? So, I don't know what a grade for this would be. It's not an F because I don't want to say, because if I was grading this film straight up and not as like it's entertaining as a bad film, I don't know, it's probably somewhere like in the D's. Raul Julia is objectively making this film at least somewhat watchable. So even for a bad film, it's not an F. It's not a complete failed waste of time and celluloid. So I would argue that. I would fight for that on a level of even people who are like who don't conceptually understand the ownership of bad flicks. I would say it is not a zero. It's not an F. Raul Julia deserves at least a point. um, so it's somewhere in the D's. But it ends up uh, being, because of its experience, because it's one of those so bad it's good, it ends up kind of bouncing back. And I would probably land it somewhere in the C's, although it's really hard to gauge that. But technically, I would say, because you can't really understand the action, it is unwatchable if you're blind and visually impaired. Even though I wouldn't stop you. I mean, if you really wanna check this out because you're like, "I've heard this is terrible," by all means. The dialogue in this is really bad, and you don't need audio description to follow that. I mean, you need audio description to follow, like, the fighting, which, honestly, you're not missing much, but you are missing stuff. You're missing the fights, and you're missing, honestly, what Blanca turns into, which is, like, an abomination to visual effects, and makeup and stuff like that, but just yeah, you're missing a lot. So I would say technically this is unwatchable, but not for the reasons you would think. I'm not saying that as the quality of this film makes it unwatchable. This is just a really bad movie, and it's having its 30th anniversary, and I'm so glad that I get to say that. And Tubi just knew me. It just knew me. I was like, seriously, it was like 5 or 6 films into Tubi. I was just looking. I was like, okay, that's there, that's there, that's there. No, I don't want to watch that. I don't. Oh my God, Street Fighter. Yes. I didn't even know it was after that. I just, yes, we're watching this right now. Um, so I had fun even without the audio description. But then again, I have seen this not that many times. It's really hard. You have to be ready for it. You have to be in the mood to watch a really awful movie. And at that point in time, it's been a couple years since I've watched Street Fighter, and I was ready for it. And it was a Tuesday. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the other side.